Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your boy Numbskull, and today in the Mind and Molecule series, we're getting into a substance that sits right at the intersection of nootropic culture, anxiety relief, and recreational curiosity: Phenibut. Phenibut has a reputation that swings wildly depending on who you ask. Some people treat it like a miracle social enhancer, others warn about dependence, and a lot of folks honestly just don't understand what it's doing pharmacologically in the first place. So today, we're going to slow things down and look at the actual neuroscience behind it. This episode is purely educational, based on pharmacology and clinical research, with a strong focus on understanding the mechanisms and the real-world effects people report. I'm not encouraging your use, and I'm certainly not discouraging your use. Real accurate information being readily available is what actually minimizes harm, and I'm here to provide just that. Let's get into it. Phenibut, chemically known as beta-phenyl-gamma-aminobutyric acid, is essentially a modified version of the inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA. The addition of a phenyl ring allows it to cross the blood-brain barrier much more easily than GABA itself, which is why it produces noticeable central nervous system effects when taken orally. It was originally developed in the Soviet Union for anxiety, sleep, and even use in cosmonauts dealing with stress. Unlike classic benzodiazepines, Phenibut doesn't primarily act on the GABA-A receptor. Its main target is the GABA-B receptor, which already tells you a lot about how it's going to feel. GABA-B receptors are slower and more modulatory compared to the fast-acting GABA-A system. Activation of these receptors reduces neuronal excitability in a way that feels more gradual and body-centered. Instead of the sharp sedation people associate with strong tranquilizers, Phenibut tends to produce a warm easing of tension that builds over time. This slower mechanism also explains why Phenibut has such a delayed onset. It doesn't hit like a typical recreational substance where effects show up quite quickly. It ramps up over hours, often peaking later than people expect, even up to like 5 hours. Phenibut also has an interesting secondary action. Beyond GABA-B activity, it interacts with voltage-dependent calcium channels, particularly the alpha-2 delta subunit. That's the same general target associated with compounds like gabapentin and pregabalin. This contributes to its relaxing, anxiolytic, and sometimes mildly euphoric qualities. Because of that dual mechanism, Phenibut occupies a unique space. It's not quite a sedative, not quite a stimulant, and not quite a classic euphoriant. Many people describe it as a reduction of internal friction rather than a push in any one direction. Subjectively, Phenibut is often associated with social ease, emotional warmth, lowered inhibition, and smoother communication. Thoughts may feel more fluid, anxiety can feel dialed down, and physical tension tends to soften quite a lot. Unlike substances that dramatically alter perception, Phenibut usually keeps cognition fairly grounded, which is part of why it gained popularity in social settings. That said, the effects are highly dose-dependent. Lower exposures tend to feel functional and clear-headed. Higher exposures can drift into heavy sedation, motor impairment, or a foggy headspace. Because the onset is slow, one of the biggest risks people run into is assuming nothing is going to happen and taking more too soon. Now I'm going to keep this part real with you all because transparency matters. I personally liked Phenibut, especially in combination settings, and literally just today I ordered some capsules because I want to try it again in a more straightforward, pure style instead of the ways I've experienced it before. From my own perspective, I can absolutely vouch for its effectiveness and usefulness recreationally when people are being responsible about it. But this is also where the serious caution comes in. Phenibut is one of those substances where physical dependence can develop shockingly fast. Some reports and case discussions suggest that even a couple of consecutive days of use can start pushing the brain toward adaptation. That doesn't mean everyone becomes dependent immediately, but the risk curve is steeper than many people expect, especially compared to substances that may feel similarly mellow at first. A lot of experienced users emphasize spacing sessions out, treating it as an occasional experience rather than a weekly routine. Harm reduction conversations usually focus on giving the nervous system plenty of time to reset, avoiding stacking it with other strong depressants, and respecting personal limits rather than escalating doses. From a neuroscience standpoint, Phenibut's ability to reduce anxiety while preserving motivation is partly tied to its indirect influence on dopamine signaling. GABA B activation in certain brain regions can disinhibit dopaminergic pathways, which may explain the subtle mood lift and confidence the people report. It's not a dopamine surge like a stimulant, feels more like a removing internal resistance. This balance between inhibition and reward is why Phenibut can feel uniquely functional compared to heavier sedatives. Physiologically, Phenibut tends to lower muscle tension, reduce stress responses, and promote relaxation. Some users report improved sleep after the main effects wear off, while others notice a lingering calm into the next day. Now, on the flip side, higher exposures can lead to dizziness, nausea, or lethargy, especially if hydration and rest aren't dialed in. Another important factor is the duration, of course. Phenibut's effects last much longer than many people expect, and sometimes stretching well into the next day, depending on your metabolism. That extended action contributes to both its appeal and its risk profile. From a safety perspective, the biggest concern around Phenibut isn't just the immediate experience. The real issue is pattern of use. Because it feels smooth and helpful, it's easy to underestimate how strongly the GABA B system adapts. Repeated frequent use can lead to tolerance, rebound anxiety, and withdrawal symptoms that are significantly more intense than people anticipate. They can even be dangerous, somewhat to quitting a benzo cold turkey. Understanding that risk up front is key. Respecting spacing, keeping expectations realistic, and approaching it with patience tends to make a huge difference in how people experience it long term. And when you zoom out, Phenibut is a fascinating example of how tweaking a familiar neurotransmitter like GABA can create an entirely new subjective profile. It blends calming, pro-social warmth with a functional headspace in a way that doesn't neatly fit traditional drug categories. It's not a benzodiazepine, it's not a classic sedative, and not a stimulant, even though it borrows pieces from all three experiences. Understanding that complexity helps explain both why people appreciate it and why it deserves respect. And that is going to wrap up this Mind and Molecule deep dive on Phenibut, a compound that lives somewhere between anxiolytic and a neurochemical balancing act. If you learned something new, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, or follow if you're catching this on TikTok. Turn on notifications if you don't want to miss future uploads. If there's another substance you want covered next, let me know down in the comments. And if you have a story you want to share of your own and have me read on the channel, do send it into my Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok DMs. As always, stay frosty, stay curious, and most importantly, stay safe out there. And with that, I'll of course see all of you in the next one.
Peace.